Hey everybody, it's your buddy Work. Posted another video. It's been about 10 months since the last video. Don't worry, we've still been playing. I just haven't been posting videos about it. I've just kind of fell behind. I've been slacking. Things have been crazy at work. But anyway, this channel, the D&D Hobbyist channel, I'm Workshop. And what I'm doing is having a video log of our campaign, which is the Planescape campaign published for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons by Wizards of the Coast. The adventure is called Turn of Fortune's Wheel. So the last video, I just had to watch it to refresh my memory. But the last video, they had accepted the job to chase down the missing Modron RO4M, and they had an encounter in the Outlands. Well, they geared up, they went into the Outlands, and then they were chasing down this walking castle. And I prefer to call it a walking tower. It's not much of a castle to me. It's just kind of a tower. It just was easier to explain that way. When I kept calling it castle, like their perception was that it was like a cloud giant's like castle in the sky kind of thing, and it was like, well, it's like a 4-story tower. So I kind of came back and started describing it as a tower, and we just call it the walking tower. So if I say walking tower, walking castle, that's what I'm referring to. So they get to the tower, and the tower has been overrun by Yugoloths, by mercenaries, right? So there's tiefling gladiators, there's Mezzaloths, there's a Nikoloth, and there's a incubus, like a male succubus. So they get there, they try talking to the gladiators, they eventually get into a fight with the gladiators. The gladiators tried to coerce them into more numbers, right? They didn't want to fight them one-on-one. They didn't want to fight them fair. They wanted to fight them with the Mezzaloths or with the Nikoloth. You know, they wanted to trick them into the area of the Nikoloth and then let their boss whoop up on them. That didn't really work. They incited their way out of that, and they pretty much wiped everybody in the tower except for the Nikoloth and the Incubus. And the Nikoloth and the Incubus had the ability to teleport, and they had the ability to go invisible, which they didn't have a counter for. So these two, they would kind of come in and fight, and then basically flee and lick their wounds and come back. So through these different encounters, eventually the party searched the tower, and they found Zathir. So they had found Zathir and freed him, and once they had Zathir, they were able to piece together a little bit more about what was going on, not a whole lot. And it kind of went on and on. It was this cat and mouse with these two Yugoloths, or whatever they were, fiends. And eventually I just kind of had them stand and fight, in which case they died. So eventually they were able to gain the tower. They found the mimir. From the mimir, you know, I gave them time. So a lot of times when they're doing research, or they're doing things where, you know, it's going to be time consuming, it's going to be a lot of different roles, I will give them like a long period of time, and they can just like take 10s on everything, and I'll let them exhaust like the library or the mimir to the best of their ability, like what they're able to do with the resources they have. And so early on, they figured out that the mimir, and I made a handout for that too. So I made the mosaic Mimir's Missing Memories, and you know, it's all these different gate towns and the name of the town and the plane that it connects to, and like, well, they knew that they needed to go there and realign the mimir in order to get all the information. Like it was like a password kind of thing that they could get into it and find these mimirs, these memories out of the mimir. And in talking to the mimir, anytime that they mentioned RO4M, it would go Rome, and that was assumed to be the Modron's voice, right? So every time they would say RO4M or this missing Modron, the mimir go roam, kind of like Wally, but with a Modron, right? So roam, and they were like, well, why would a mimir have a name? I thought it was RO4M, and Zathir called him Romy, uh, and said that the story didn't really match up and everything. So they kind of bonded with Zathir a little bit, and they started to go through the planes. And I was like, you can go in any order, whatever. It's distance is kind of relative in the Outlands, and the tower knows how to get there through the Castellan and everything. So they go to Automata first, and then Automata, they and I think this. So I'm summarizing multiple sessions. So sometimes sessions we would have all 5 players, and sometimes we would just have 3 players. I didn't really play if I had less than 3. But depending on who those players were, some of those players wanted to interact with everything and just milk it for story and do everything you could possibly do. And then other people just were like, check off the list, check off the list, check off, right, like they're playing Skyrim or something. Both approaches are valid. I can roll with both of those. So some of these gate towns, they did like absolutely everything, talked to everyone, did all that they could do, and like I'm winging a lot of stuff. And then in others, they just kind of went in, attuned the mimir, and bailed. So Automata was like that. They basically got there and they cast like invisibility and mage hand and stuff, and like snuck up and flew it up there and attuned it and bailed. So they weren't in an Automata. They didn't engage with side quests at all. Nothing like that. Next they went to Cursed. Cursed, you helped the guy get his ghost son out of Cursed. They didn't want to go into Cursed because they knew they couldn't. They were going to have a hard time getting out. So yeah, they basically went in. I was really good with the mood with Cursed. I don't know, just something about the way that I described it really carried through, like how hopeless and like prison-y it was. Like, I don't know, it really carried through. It kind of resonated with them. They were able to attune the mimir pretty easily, and then they helped him get out, helped the son get out. They got to beat up on some harmonium guys, which they really like to do. They don't like the harmonium at all, so they were like, yeah, we get to stomp on these guys. So that one went pretty well. They went back to the tower and took off, and it was at that point I decided that I was going to do a glitch. So one of the roles was, while you're going, and all of these gate towns, I always said it took like 2 or 3 weeks to get from point A to point B. So they were, 2 weeks into it, in early evening, they come into a thick fog. The fog is just a pea soup fog. It's just crazy. And everybody was like watching. Everybody's on the rails while they're in this fog. It's super eerie and all of that. And then while they're there, I gave 2 of them that were on the same side of the tower, and they were able to see a parallel tower going the other way. But the one that they were in was white, and the one that walked by was black. And they were like, is that a different one? Is that a second one? They asked Zathir, and Zathir doesn't know, and I had them all switch characters. And Zathir's like, wait, who are you? And they were like, we're blah, 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 we're looking for Rome. And he was like, oh, yeah, no, you've been here for weeks. It was like everything was kind of realigning. Originally, I liked the glitch idea. The problem with the glitch idea, and really the problem with Amnesiac Heroes on the whole, is that you lose that investment. So once I had them switch out characters, they really kind of stopped caring about the characters. So the characters started to get a little bit more reckless and a little less, which I guess maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of why it's like written like this, is, you know, you don't have anything to lose. You've already lost everything, so, you know, go for it. But so yeah, I don't know. So we did the glitch there, and then they were on their way to Excelsior, the gate town to Celestia, and instead of arriving at Excelsior, they arrived at Automata again. They're like, what is going on here? You know, and it's like, well, they must have got turned around in the fog or whatever. So the whole idea is that they're in like a mirror dimension, like they're in a different, they're not, you know, something happened, a glitch happened and everything changed, but nobody realizes everything changed, but they know something changed. Just kind of setting the mood for all of that. I mean, it took them over a month, I think, to get to Excelsior. They get to Excelsior and they did all of the side quests, which were freeing the souls of the people. The hag was collecting souls and all of that. So they played detective and they did all of that. They really engaged with that. I felt like that was a pretty good session. They enjoyed beating down the hag. I probably could have had the hag get away, but I thought it would be more rewarding if the hag were able to be apprehended. So from there they went to Fawnell, and then again in Fawnell, just walk right past all the side quests. I think maybe somebody was late that day, or they were only there for half the session. Maybe they were there for Excelsior and they left early, and it was a little different vibe after they left. But yeah, for Fawnell, like they knew the one character was his origin story was he was from Fawnell, so whenever they got there, he was like, this isn't Fawnell, and they're like, yeah, this is, you know, Fawnell fell into the Beastlands and all this, so it just kind of reiterates the chaotic and changing nature of the planes, and how it's, you know, it's not reality, it's heaven, and heaven gets rewritten by the whims of a lot of different forces. So they pretty much just went and attuned and left, like they were good there. Then on the way to Glorium, right before they get to Glorium, which is the portal to Isgard, I did the Semuana's Bog, which is like the god of fitness and health or whatever. So they really enjoyed that with all the lizard men, you know, having pose offs and feats of strength and everything. And they were all very, I had all the lizardmen were all very supportive, you know, come on, bro, you can do it, bro, come on, one more, you know, and it was looking good, bro, you got this, bro, you know, and it was all very bro, and it was funny, like we all had a really good time with it, and they came out of that recharge. So we get to Glorium, and in Glorium they did everything. So they did all the side quests, they did the huge race with the crocodile snakes or whatever. Those things were tough. They struggled with those, but that was good. Like they were competing against like the two people, and they hated the one guy on the they hated the one guy on the flying carpet. And at one point, one of them made a wish, or one of them, he had something, and he was able to get some influence. You know, he basically like cursed this guy, and like the guy died. Like it was really funny. He said he's familiar to check on the guy, and it was just like the carpet was out there with no guy on it. It was funny, but yeah, they had the race, they attuned the mimir, they went and they saved the nearby town, and did all of that stuff. And it was great. They really enjoyed that part. The last two, Acheron, so they did the big fight in Acheron. They immediately knew who the mole was, who the spy was, immediately. And I kept downplaying it and downplaying it. Oh, don't jump to conclusions. You know, we trust all of our generals and all this. They knew immediately. And then as soon as his cover slipped, they were just all over him like white on rice. They were all over this guy. So they beat him down, and he eventually teleported away. And he gave them, you know, the last thing he said was like, "You have made an enemy this day." So, but they were able to accomplish the goal on that one. That was a lot of big combats. This is the way that I ran that. It was fun. And then Arborea was the big party, the big birthday party with the Titan that wanted to cause trouble. So they one of the players wasn't into it. Everybody else seemed to enjoy it. We're kind of going along with it, but it was role play heavy, and he I don't know, he just did not have, maybe he has a little sister that behaves like that. He just had zero patience for this Titan. So that was pretty funny. So they completed all of those. Then the mimir, you know, became more functional. From there, well, actually, during all of these, you know, in between the sessions, like after the glitch, and they did Excelsior on the way back from Excelsior, they ran into Rennie, the baby time dragon, and they did the time. They talked to him, and they talked to the witch, and they did all this stuff. So, well, no, they came back, and it was sitting on the tower. Yeah, it was sitting on the tower, and they met, and they, oh, you know, perhaps we have met, perhaps we have yet to meet, and blah, blah, blah. But I did the Mausoleum of Chronepsis in there, so we had that in there as a side quest. We had a glitch in there as a side quest, whatever, as something between the gate towns, and I did the Lizard Men. I didn't do the baseball game, wasn't into it. But you know, once they had reassembled the mimir enough, they knew that they needed to go in the spire. They were able to track Rome when they got to the spire, which is very, very unbelievable to me. Like this is a lot of the story gets kind of weak in this, but so they get to the spire. They get into Dendratus, or they get turned away from Dendratus, but they get Acetylus, and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. This guy's going to help us out." You know, they go through the Desert of Rust with Acetylus. So I did something with this where it was really cool. It played really well. Whenever they were, you know, I played the spire pretty much like a hollow log, and they were climbing up the inside wall of this hollow log. So, you know, occasionally like a piece of rusted equipment would fall down into the Desert of Rust in the bottom, but it was this huge open chasm that's pitch black and pretty much silent. So I drew out the path on my map, and it was just basically a zigzaggy line, and I put the landmarks on the path, and on the hex side. So I made it a hex crawl. So I kind of took a page from Tomb of Annihilation, which we had so much fun with, and then I made random encounters. So I did like a good, a neutral, and a combat, you know, non-combat, a neutral, and a combat. And we would roll, you know, I would have them roll every time they went to a hex. And then I said they could do 3 hexes a day. So they basically did morning, noon, and night, and they would rest wherever that was for the night, and then start again on the next day. So, you know, I had them climbing the inside of this for days and days. Maybe over a week, I don't really remember. At this point, they did, one of the people was a cleric and could produce food and water, so that was helpful. So they're climbing the inside of this, and I had the demigod of the piercers. With, you know, every once in a while he would dive bomb them and fall into the chasm, and then, you know, several days later he'd do it again, and he missed them every time except for the last time, when he took out like a bridge. So then they had to figure out how to get over the bridge. Some of them had flight, and they're kind of ferrying each other and stuff, but it was really good. Acetylus is Billy Badass. Like those Dendrati or the what is he? Real Monty. The Real Monty are freaking crazy, man. I really like them. You know, they fought that dark. Well, they get to the end. They fight a Dark Weaver. Yeah. So they fought the Dark Weaver and Acetylus when they find Rome. He's trapped by the Dark Weaver after dealing with the Baron Aloth. Connor's character was the wizard character, wanted the dark secret, so he learned the dark secret of the multiverse, and his eyes burned out, and he has eye bite like once per day or 3 times per day or something like that. So they dealt with him. That was very moody. It went very well. Like we just had that hex crawl. It went really well. The last fight I had a fight on the hex crawl with these. I made them like dog gargoyles, and they could climb up and down the cliff face. So they were like trying to push them off, and they didn't do a lot of damage, but they had a very high AC. They were resistant to everything, and they had a lot of hit points. So it was a tough fight that wasn't super dangerous, but they didn't realize that it wasn't especially dangerous. So they're like beating them and beating them and beating them, and they're like, man, nothing's really hurting these guys. Like, what are we gonna do? So that went really well too. So I think I took probably the most liberties with the climbing of the spire. Heck of a fight with the Dark Reaver and the Acetylus. They were able to squeak that out. I felt like I played them very well. I was actually trying to kill characters because I wanted to force more glitches, and they did well. It was a good fight. So once they had Rome, they interview Rome. They go back to the tower. They're doing all this stuff. They learn basically that Rome isn't what Shemeshka said that he was, and that, you know, they've been sent on a fool's errand basically to be disposed of. But Rome, which is probably my fault, explained the whole Modrons being trapped in the Tyrant Spire, and that he didn't want to go back to the cage. He didn't want to go back to Sigil or to Fortune's Wheel or to Shemeshka in any way. And they were like, okay, well, let's go save these Modrons. So they jumped over like that whole middle part and went straight to let's save the Modrons. So I was like, that's gonna be a little bit hairy. So I'm over 22 minutes. I think I'll cut this up, make another video, and get everybody caught up on where we are next. So watch for that. 2 videos in the same day. It's crazy, right? All right. I'll talk to you later.